Connecting now, and we are live. Okay, let's kick off the recording. All right, hello everyone. My name is John DeGoes, and I am CEO of Golem Cloud. And with me today is Daniel Vygovsky, who's our senior staff engineer at Golem Cloud, who heads up all engineering here in our open source project, Golem Cloud, or Golem rather, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to anything I've been talking about for the past year, is a new open source serverless platform that's designed to help you build extremely scalable and reliable backends that can power REST APIs, mobile apps, web apps, all that stuff. And I am here today and very excited to announce the conclusion of our Bounty to Hire event, which we began, I think, more than 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks ago, or maybe 4 weeks ago, maybe even 5 weeks ago, we decided we needed to hire a new engineer to join our team at Golem Engineering. And it's very, very hard to assess engineers. It's sort of legendarily hard to assess whether or not a given candidate is going to end up being a good fit for an engineering position. And I'm not a very big fan of the way that a lot of tech companies do this, which is to give you lots of computer science problems that test your ability to know the difference between depth first and breadth first graph search and all the other stuff that they quiz you on. I mean, yeah, that's all great. And if you know that stuff, fantastic. It means you know your computer science. But knowing the answers to technical challenge problems doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good fit for a given role. And what I have found actually over the course of a few decades of hiring people, actively hiring people, is that many times someone who is very, very active in open source development and who is contributing to some sort of open source project in a similar domain, these types of engineers often make fantastic additions to a team. In fact, I would venture to say that probably 20 to 30% of all the people working at Zyverge, and probably 80% of the people working at Golem Cloud, are active open source contributors to some sort of related issue. And so when I was thinking about how would we find a new hire, how would we find someone to join the Golem Cloud engineering team, I was thinking, well, let's go ahead and use open source. And there was just one little problem. Well, there's not really a lot of open source contributors to Golem. It's a very new open source project, and it's a complex code base. So that led to this idea to put a bounty on an open source issue inside the Golem Cloud repository. And I have had really fantastic experience with Algora, which is probably the leading open source bounty organization out there. We have used Algora extensively at Zyverge to, I think, give away more than $60,000 in bounties and introduce a whole new generation of open source contributors to the Zio ecosystem. So had a fantastic experience with them. So I decided that in order to find a candidate for joining the Golem Cloud engineering team, we would spec up a single issue that's pretty substantive in nature. This is not something you could crank out in an afternoon or a weekend or even a week of nights and weekends. This is something that would take you probably a couple weeks of part-time contribution in order to get it into a state where we would even consider it as a potential solution for this issue. And we would put a really big bounty on it. So this is by far the largest bounty we've ever done. It's a $15,000 bounty. And then we would just wait to see what happened. And I have to say that I am just delighted by the results. I think we've seen Tens of thousands of developers learn about Golem through this bounty to hire event. We got hundreds of GitHub stars. We got more than 100 new users on our Discord. So the response to this event has been overwhelming. And I'm just delighted with all the participation we've seen from some really fantastic Rust engineers out there. So in the end, fast forward to the conclusion of the Bounty to Hire event, we ended up getting 5 total submissions. And I think 20 people said they were going to work on it. 20 engineers said they were going to work on it. And I have no doubt that many of them gave it a try. But this problem is deceptively complex. And part of the complexity arises both from the fact that Golem codebase is relatively complex, but also the space we're operating in. Transparent, durable execution is hard to get your mind around, and you really have to come to this problem with the mindset of a distributed systems engineer. And then there's the code base is big, right? It's big, it's sprawling. There's lots of different components to the application. There's REST APIs, there's gRPC APIs, there's core infrastructure, there's dependency. And in order to make this change, you need to touch many different places. So that's part of what makes that so complicated, and part of why, in the end, we only had 5 submissions. And we took a look at those 5 submissions, and we quickly narrowed that down to 3 finalists. And these finalists, each and every one of them, I think, demonstrates incredible skill and talent. And they were able to successfully look at this code base and figure out what they needed to in order to make large scale changes across all these different components that make up Golem. So congratulations to all of them on getting that far. It's amazing to see that. And there's no doubt in my mind that every one of them is more than qualified to join the Golem engineering team. So we have guaranteed interviews for all 3 finalists, and that's without even not necessarily knowing which of them are looking for a job. We know not everyone who participated in this problem was looking for a job. So that said, we have 3 outstanding interview offers to all of these fantastic finalists. And what we're going to do today is announce the winner. But before we announce the winner, I thought it would be a great idea to basically give you an overview of each of the finalists and then take a look at their solutions and maybe provide some high-level commentary on what we were all thinking when we took a look at the pull requests that they submitted for their solutions. So up first was the first pull request that we received, and we received this from open source contributor Maxim Shuvalov. And Maxim, I actually know Maxim from open source contributions. I've met him a couple times in real life, and he contributed to various projects in the Zio ecosystem. So I think he's probably most notable for his contribution, or rather creation of and promotion of, a project called Zio Profiling, which can do some really great profiling of asynchronous code that is written using the Zio open source library. So what I'm going to do now is turn this over to Daniel, who is going to give you an overview of our impressions of Maxim's solution and tell you what we liked and maybe what we thought there was room for improvement on with Maxim's contribution. Daniel?
Yes, thank you. I'm sharing my screen now. Just a second. Yeah, so as you can see, here are the 3 bounty claims that we are talking about. And the first is open is Maxim's. It's really hard to give an overview of these pull requests. Each 3 are really huge. It took a lot of time to properly review them and then make a decision. But just a few things to point out. What I really liked about this one is clear communication, pointing out all different parts where some kind of decision was made and explaining why, and providing explanations for all these points. Also, actually, this one is a green pull request, so it could be merged if it would be chosen. Or it contains stats, the tests are passing. So I like this aspect of it. And what else? Yeah, this, I think out of the three solutions, this one is the one that contains the most advanced implementation of how the file system is mapped for the workers. Well, this is a bit hard to explain without understanding the full specification of the problem, but basically the task was to provide some kind of file system to each Golem worker, which consists of read-only and non-read-only parts, and how these are mixed together, how these are mapped into the virtual file system of the worker, how the immutable parts are shared among workers. I like the implementation in this pull request.
What's this one clock in at? 9,000 lines of code added, right?
Yeah. So I'm not going to show it line by
No.
yeah, as you can see, 173 files changed. So
Wow.
I'm not going into details. If I have to point out something to improve, there were a few parts where we could have seen more or better reuse of existing code instead of copying some stuff. We will provide some more specific feedback, of course, out after this event regarding these. And there are some specific edge cases that are I believe not properly handled in this one. Like they are coming from the very difficult lifecycle management of how workers are handled in the executor. So when they are started, they are doing all kind of things asynchronously, and I believe there are a few edge cases that have to be handled better in this pull request. But otherwise, it's a really nice job.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Daniel, for that overview. So up next, we had a solution from a Colin Neville, whom I actually don't know from the open source community, but I do know that Colin is an open source contributor and he's done some open source Rust before. In particular, he is the author of this Rust crate called Triangulate, which is related to sort of polygon triangulation, converting things to triangles. And we're going to take a look at his solution up next.
Yes, so I already opened it. As you can see, this is once again a huge pull request with a clear description of what is done, what is missing. Uh, I I had the impression, and also one of my colleagues pointed this out, that this was a really easy to follow, very easy to read solution. So it's a very clean implementation of everything that's written here. What else? Yeah, I like that some difficulties like our own open API code generator not supporting things were not stopping Colin, and he fixed those as well, those problems as working on the solution. And yeah, it's also a very nice submission. Well, what to improve in this one? Well, I can say the same things about reusing, especially things about the app manifest handling. Those could be reused better from our existing code base. And another things I wanted to point out regarding this one is backward compatibility on the APIs. It's nothing serious, but without some fixes, it's currently breaking some of the backward compatibility. And as you can see, there are still some points here that are planned to do, but there was no time to finish them properly. So
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
that's the short review of this.
All right. And then last but certainly not least, we have a submission from a Martin Kavik, whom I don't know, but I actually do know of. So Martin's an open source contributor, and he's the author of this really interesting Rust framework called Moon Zoom, which is basically a full stack framework for Rust. So you can use it for the browser part as well as the backend part. So really interesting. And I was delighted to see his contribution to this challenge. Daniel, why don't you walk us through that one?
Yeah, so as you can see, Martin provided a really nice and detailed explanation of everything he done. Uh, I really like this clear style of communication in the pull request. I also really like that he found some issues with working on the Golem code base on Windows and just decided to fix them. So these are definitely very nice aspects of this pull request. The code itself contains many interesting details, and a lot of thought was putting into it. To what about things to improve? I I think it could contain more tests. I don't think it has many, or I don't remember. Okay, probably has a few, but not a lot. As he points out in these comments, not every feature that was asked by the specification is done. And the third thing that I wanted to point out is that while reviewing the core worker executor part, I found some signs of some misunderstandings of how the worker lifecycle is uh, how the workers are handled within the executor, what their lifecycle is, and at what points you need to await things or trigger some things that are missing from this solution. But otherwise, once again, a very nice submission. So thank you for that.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Daniel, for providing those overviews. Looking at all of this, I'm just sort of very impressed by how much work each of these contributors put into their solution and how much they had to get their head around. Like this is, I think, for people on the Golem engineering team, they obviously know what all these different pieces are, what they do. They know how Golem works, how it does sort of record and replay and all the other fancy stuff that it works, how it achieves durability. They know something about WASM and WASM components, the component model, component types, and so on and so forth. There's just a huge amount, I think, of domain knowledge that goes into creating a pull request that is capable of solving a significant challenge like the initial file system was. So, congratulations to everyone, all of our finalists, on making it that far. It truly does speak to your skill and competence as a senior Rust engineer that you were able to get that far. And we really appreciate all of these contributions. Now, at the end of the day, however, there can be only one winner to the bounty to hire challenge. We can only give that bounty award of $15,000 to a single contestant. And in the end, we decided to pick someone. Daniel, who did we decide to pick?
Oh, I didn't know that I will be the one who is telling it. So we decided to pick Maxim.
Congratulations, Maxim. Your PR is the winning PR, and it is our intention to merge your PR after a few, I think, relatively small and straightforward changes are made that we will communicate after this event concludes. So I have invited Maxim to join us for a couple of minutes and just say hi to folks. So I just sent that invitation now. He had no idea he was going to win. None of the contestants knew. So I just sent that invite now. We'll see if he is able to join. But while he is wrestling with Zoom, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and walk us through the thinking of the Golem engineering team Why Maxim's solution? Because like they're so close, right? And they're all really great. Why Maxim's solution?
Yeah, it was really hard to choose because they were all so great. So yeah, I basically two major things. First of all, we really like the engagement that he was making it basically passing all the tests. It's up to date with all the changes, so it's ready to merge. And at the same time, we felt that this solution requires the least amount of tweaks before it can be merged. And the second, and maybe even more important part, is that I felt like he, based on the detailed review, I felt he has the deepest understanding of how the internals of the whole Golem system work, and I really like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that, I look for that in open source contributors is I look for people who deeply understand what's going on because the quality of the pull requests that they generate is just so much higher. There's less review. You can trust them way more when you know that they deeply understand how things are working behind the scenes. So I definitely see that. And obviously it helps when a pull request is passing the build when there are no conflict failures or test failures. It makes it, as an open source author and someone who oversees a lot of open source projects, one of the pieces of advice I have to open source contributors who want their pull requests merged in is make it easy. Follow existing conventions. Make sure there aren't any merge conflicts. Make sure that the build is passing, that all tests are passing. Make sure you added more tests, et cetera. Like make it really easy for a open source author to say yes and to hit that merge button. And definitely, I think Maxim went out of his way to ensure that as he was working on his solution. So it looks like Maxim has successfully joined. Maxim, are you here? Can you hear us? Can we hear you? We cannot hear you, Maxim. Can you unmute yourself? Hello?
Yes. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
fantastic. Yes, there you
Can you hear
are.
me?
I hear you now. So, first off, congratulations, Maxim, on winning the
One
Bounty to
second.
Hire challenge. Can you hear us?
Hello? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Mm, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So first off, congratulations on winning the Bounty to Hire challenge.
Can I speak now? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good. Thank you. It was definitely a very interesting project to work on.
So what motivated you to tackle a contribution of this size and scope? This is not a good first issue, so to speak. This is really something, well beyond what most people would attempt as part of an open source contribution. What motivated you to work on this? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spotlight, but if you know.
Actually, I used it exactly as that as the first issue. So I read the Rust book a couple of years. Uh,
I think we might be out of sync. I think there's a time delay between us. So I'll just give you a moment to answer that before we proceed.
okay. So yes, very much so. Okay, let me start. Let me start over again. So I read the Rust book a couple of years back, and I always wanted to work on some Rust project and actually get to use the language because I think it was because I liked it a lot. But I never found a good opportunity to do so. And now with the huge bounty attached to this issue, it was a very a good opportunity to play around with Rust.
No, thank you for that answer. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that that's the way I view bounties is they're a good excuse to spend an evening working on some issue. And the typical bounty that we put on Zio projects, for example, it's something you could probably solve in a couple hours. So it is like an evening, and that bounty is just like extra motivation to do something that's good for the community, to level up your skills, to build your open source resume, and so forth. So nice to hear that putting a $15,000 bounty on this helped motivate you to get serious about Rust and learn more about how to use this very powerful programming language in order to solve very complex challenges, especially in this domain, which is cloud infrastructure. So working on Golem Cloud is you are building a new generation of cloud infrastructure. So congratulations again on that. It's going to be fantastic to see this merged in and to see all this hard work pay off for our users who have, we've got multiple requests for this feature, the ability to ship one of your components on Golem with an initial set of files that is going to be powered by all of your hard work here. So congratulations again, and we will follow up after the event to make sure that we get those last few revisions in. We would have loved to do a live merge because the way Algora works is as soon as we merge it, then basically it transfers you the money. So that would have been super fun to do on air. But I know we have a few minor little tweaks that after your 9,000 lines of additions are probably going to be pretty easy and straightforward for you. So we'll get back to you on that. And then what I would like to do in closing up is, well, first off, just give folks who are watching next steps. If you were interested and engaged in this open source bounty program, then please do look for bounties on Algora. They have a ton of bounties across all programming languages. So if you want to get your start in open source contribution in Ruby or Python or C, C++, or Scala, Rust, obviously, then just head over to algora.io and you can look up bounties by programming language. And we have a ton of bounties actually still open. I think we have thousands or maybe more than that in bounties on the Zio organization. And we're going to do a bunch of new bounties on the Golem organization as well. So if you're interested in Scala contributions or Rust contributions, then keep an eye on the stuff we're doing, both in the Zio open source ecosystem and in the Golem open source ecosystem. And then I want to thank each and every one of our contestants. Remember, we started out with 5. So, and actually the number who tried it and probably who forked it and probably who played around writing some lines of code is much, much higher. We had 20 people officially take on the challenge, and the number of people who forked the repository and did something or else in their private fork is many times that amount. So thank all of you for giving this open source project the time of day and for getting to know it a bit. I think what we're doing at Golem Cloud is very interesting and very powerful, and it's going to end up changing the way people build distributed applications that are elastic and highly reliable. So thank you for giving this project some attention. And I want to thank our finalists in particular, all 3 of you, Martin and Colin and Maxim, for going the extra mile and coming up with something that all of us could see ultimately merged into the code base. And I want to thank our marketing department at Golem Cloud for promoting this event across all these different channels and just all the stuff that I've seen coming from LinkedIn and X and so forth, raising awareness and making sure that people knew what we were about to do and had the opportunity to participate in that. I also want to thank Algora for partnering with us on this Bounty to Hire event. They did a fantastic job promoting, and in the end, we got, tens of thousands of developers on this, and we got all of that, new users on Discord and new stars on GitHub, all of that as a result of the promotion, the cross promotion that we were doing with them. And of course, they've built an incredibly powerful platform that is enabling open source contributors to be compensated, not in the usual ways. Obviously, writing open source is good for you. It's good for your brain. It's good for your open source resume. It's good for your career, but also allowing us to reimburse open source contributors and buy them a dinner or a coffee, or in this case, Maxim, I think, a new motorcycle or whatever you want with 15,000. That's quite the bounty there. So hope you have fun and enjoy that. And then I also want to thank everyone who has been following along with this event and who has been checking out the pull requests and is attending live now. I hope this has been interesting, that you have had fun, that you've learned more about Golem, that you've also learned more about hiring challenges, and how open source contributions can play a role in getting you that next position. Like I said, a huge chunk of the people that I work with on a daily basis were hired directly because of their open source contributions. So that's one way to look for that next job. Just get involved with a project that's interesting and exciting and that has people you would like to work with on a daily basis, and that might line up your next opportunity. So thank you to everyone, and I will see you around. Take care, everyone.